All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Sav.
I'm Jess, and welcome to And a Diet Soda, episode 28. What do food labels really mean? Oh boy, you can say that I'm very excited about this episode, to say the least. We're shifting gears a little bit. We're going to take a little trip to the grocery store with our guest and discuss what food labels actually mean and what you're getting when you choose those certain foods. So there is much debate all the time about organic, commodity, free range, cuts of meat, all that good stuff. So we are just so excited to get into it today.
Hi, it's Sav and Jess. Welcome to And a Diet Soda, an opportunity for people to celebrate their successes, share their failures, and hopefully give a little advice on all things relatable along the way.
This community is for appreciating the little things and fostering positive mindsets and intuitive thoughts by talking to people, because chances are they've been through it too.
Is Rain Reich, one of our best friends from Colorado State University. Go Rams. We've known each other for about 6 or 7 years now. Rain has an undergraduate degree in animal sciences, where she found her passion for ag education, and meat science, where she dove into the ag industry as a whole to really break down the farm to table progress. Since graduating, she's worked for several agricultural-based companies, all while obtaining her master's in agricultural resource management from CSU. What a mouthful. She's an outdoorsy girl at heart, loves fishing, horses, and all things ag-related. Welcome, Rain.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here with two amazing women. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you for being here. I'm so stoked. It's something that needs to be talked about, and like people are just going to learn so much. I'm going to learn so much. So we're just going to dive into it with all of our questions. Food labels. Food labels are something everyone notices, but no one hardly pays attention to. So let's start by talking about, why do food labels matter and why we're talking about this today? Why do you care so much about it?
Well, I think that food labels matter because they essentially help a person make a decision on what they're going to be putting in their body and how they're going to be spending their money. And in today's world, marketing and aesthetic and pretty labels and catchy phrases and words is everything. So years ago, I became really passionate about breaking down what it actually means, what catches a consumer's eye, and if those marketing techniques are kind of taking advantage of consumers and causing them to spend more money on something that is actually the same product as something without so many fancy, catchy labels.
So many fancy, catchy labels. I think the number one thing is organic. I always say organic versus inorganic, but you corrected me when we were talking before, and you said organic, commodity, and all natural. And speaking from personal experiences, I make fun of her a little bit for it, so it's okay, she knows. But my sister-in-law, as soon as she had a baby, everything was organic in the household. I don't know if she still does this, but I think that that's a really common thing to do, is to start eating clean, quote unquote clean, start totally transitioning over to that. So I think that organic is the biggest elephant in the room. So why don't we start with the differences between organic, commodity, and all natural?
Absolutely. I actually remember back when we were kids, when organic became such a craze and such a big phase, and it is extremely important. And we will talk about that. So I would say, yes, the big three are organic, commodity, and all natural. Commodity is a label you don't really see. It's essentially anything that isn't labeled organic. So we'll start with organic. The organic label, what many people get confused is, organic label does not mean that the product is any more or any less nutritionally beneficial than a commodity or an all-natural product. What it means is that farmer or rancher or producer has taken the time to meet certain standards met by the United States Department of Agriculture in order to be labeled USDA organic. Some of those practices include limited use of pesticides. A lot of people think organic means no pesticides. What it means is plant-based or natural pesticides. You can still use those pesticides to deter things that damage your crop. It also means that there are no genetically modified organisms within that packaged or processed product. On average, organic is marked at about 47% more expensive than all natural or a commodity item. However, it is very fair to say that farmers take so much time and care in order to hold these standards, because one of the standards, for example, is you can't be within so many miles of a farm that uses pesticides. And that is extremely difficult, because if there's a farm that's already there that is using pesticides that your organic farm couldn't use, you could never be registered organic. So there are certain things that they work very hard to uphold. So essentially, when you're buying organic, you're buying all the work the farmer has put into the label of organic, not the nutrition. And then on the other side, natural is a voluntary label that people can use in order to label something natural. But let's break down what naturally means. Anything that's created by nature or in nature is natural. For example, my cotton sheets are all natural. A rock is all natural. A pig, no matter if it is processed organically or commodity ways, it is a natural product. So all natural has become that middle line that isn't as expensive as organic, but it's still marked up from a commodity product because people are under the assumption it's raised all natural. That means it's never given anything unnatural. So those are kind of the breakdowns of those three terms.
And just to clarify, meaning it's natural does not mean that it is never given anything unnatural.
Yeah.
Okay.
Holy crap. Did you see my face this whole time? I was like,
it was amazing.
I was like, oh my goodness. I'm just like, it's just crazy to me because we've talked a lot, and you've seen, we've talked on Instagram. I'm always very passionate about like organic versus non-organic. Like it really is just something that gets me fired up. And I don't even know anything about it, but I do know that nutritionally, we need to stop making people feel bad about what they have access to, because
100%.
like, if you just eat freaking fruits and vegetables with your meals, like just eat it. It really gets me going. People have already heard about it, so like I don't need to go on it again. So it's just crazy to me. But do you think that, like, I don't know how to say this, like it's not to sound rude to any farmer at all, but like let's say we have organic, I don't know, like literally corn versus non-organic corn. It's literally just the difference in pesticides, right? And I've done some research on pesticides, and there's some really phenomenal researchers and PhDs who will like say that like the amount of pesticides could never hurt a person. Like the amount of pesticides that you would need to farm with to hurt a person eating this like corn, it's not in the food. So I guess my question is, what is the like typical amount in like a ballpark range that people use pesticides to farm with, and what is the purpose of using a pesticide when farming?
See, and I will be completely honest, that crop related science is something I'm not completely familiar yet.
Yeah.
But what you mentioned about the pesticides not harming humans is completely accurate. I mean, the bottom line is the USDA is the Department of Agriculture is meant to protect humans and to protect animals and crops and everything that we do that supports us in agriculture. So if it was harmful to people, like at this point in our technology and our research and what we know about the human body, I genuinely don't believe that they would allow us to put it on our products if it did cause harm to us. Now, I do know that there are certain people out there who are allergic to those pesticides and what's in those pesticides. And a lot of the time, those people think that they are having a gluten intolerance or celiac disease, when a lot of the time they're having an allergic reaction to the pesticides that were used on the wheat or the corn. So instead they switch to organic bread. Like for example, bread, they'll switch to an organic bread, and then all of a sudden they can enjoy bread again because their body just didn't tolerate the pesticides. And that's totally okay and totally valid. But as far as the amount goes and the units, I don't know. What I do know is pesticides are expensive, so farmers aren't going to use too much. They're going to use the minimum amount that is needed to mainly deter insects, is what pesticides are used for. Like grasshoppers, ladybugs, aphids, anything that causes damage to the product, any insect, larva. There can be bacteriums or parasites that can break down and harm those crops and then cause a product that is unable to be sold. That's why they use the pesticides.
There's something to be said too about the like food sensitivities in general. That's just something to note for anybody listening, because that's a huge thing to, if you anything's going on and you just like you've switched around in foods, it's a great resource to like just start at to see what could be impacting you. So I love that. That was like a hard runoff question for me. I'm just like blown away. I'll try to pull it together. It's just like a crazy whole concept that like I feel like so many of us don't know. And it's just like we've been brainwashed to like think that organic is like the end all be all of health. And it's just not. So it's
I love that. And once again, I'm just going to state it does not affect your nutrition whatsoever. It does not change that. And we've attached some resources, but there are many, many studies that show there is not a measurable difference nutrition wise between an organic or inorganic product of any kind, whether it's eggs or milk or a processed item like chips. There is no measurable nutritional difference. It just refers to the practices of that farmer, processor, whatever. And I do want to just say what you said about it's better for people to get food in their body rather than restrict themselves because they can't afford organic. That was actually something I read in one of these articles that we're going to post for our listeners. It says that a lot of parents have felt pressure to buy less for their children. So on average, children who do eat purely organic diets are actually eating less fruits and vegetables because they're more expensive and they're harder for their parents to afford. So the article said, just buy your kids fresh fruits and veggies. Just buy them, wash them with mild dish soap if you need to. I know there's vegetable washes out there and fruit washes out there, but it's more important to get that nutritional stuff into your body than worry about the label and miss out on those nutrients. So I thought that was
and speaking bacterially and gut wise, like our bodies are meant to fight off these bacteria. Like bacteria is not also a bad thing. I mean, they use pesticides and everything to help protect us, but just like basic dirt bacteria is not meant to hurt. Like your body can fight that off. So it's really sad as far as food insecurity goes that people can afford a bag of chips or they buy that bag of chips because they can't afford the organic and it makes them feel bad. And the bag of chips might say organic, or natural, like you said, which is just still blows my mind. But as far as the packaging goes, what about when packaging in general says like no hormones or antibiotics? That's a crazy one to me. Antibiotics. I'm just like, what?
That is one of my favorite things to talk about. So first things first, I know, right? First things first, I just want to say that in our normal everyday lives, humans get sick and humans take antibiotics, right? So they're not a foreign thing. They're not scary. They're something that humans obviously benefit us. They also benefit animals when they get sick. So a lot of the time you will see on packages, no antibiotics ever. That is because federal regulation prohibits the use of antibiotics in pork and poultry products. That was a mouthful. So essentially, what it means is people are putting that label on their product to make it look like it is special, when by federal law, you are not allowed to administer that in an animal, in a poultry product or a pork product. And now I will tell you why. Antibiotics can be given to animals when they are sick. They're given a specific dosage for a specific amount of time, just like we're given amoxicillin for 7 days when we have strep throat. However, when the animal is done with their dosage of antibiotic, they are put through a withdrawal period. This withdrawal period means they are kept separate from the herd. If it's a cow that's used for dairy, they are milked separately. They're still milked so that they aren't cause discomfort. Their milk is discarded. It's thrown away because there could be trace antibiotics in that milk. After the withdrawal period is over, which can be anywhere from 45 to 60 to 90 days, depending on the antibiotic, that animal is put back into the herd and is safe for human consumption. Now, in order to ensure that that animal is not producing a product that has traces of antibiotics, every animal that is processed for meat, their carcass is tested for antibiotics. And I know I'm an animal scientist. I should have put a warning that I'm going to say things that are real and sciencey and whatever.
Oh.
I'm so sorry.
It's just that's crazy because I'm like, I can literally see a dead human body and anatomy and not be like affected, but you say carcass and I'm like, ooh, I don't know. It's just
That's
like
funny because I'm the opposite. Like I can see like from necropsy, like all the carcasses and everything, and then I see a human body and I'm like, oh,
And I'm like, what is that?
Anyway, sorry.
Right? No, that's totally fine. I honestly thought about that before we recorded. I was like, maybe I should put like a trigger warning because like I'm gonna say things that might not be fluffy. But that animal is tested, and if it tests hot, which means there are still trace antibiotics in a system, it's discarded. It's not used for human consumption. If a milk product from an animal that's been treated with antibiotics because they were sick and they deserve to be treated and not die from sickness. If it tests positive for antibiotics, the entire batch of milk is thrown away. It doesn't matter if it is 2 nanograms of antibiotic trace in that milk, an entire 20-ton truck of milk will be completely dumped. And that testing happens before the milk even leaves the dairy. That happens before that milk even gets to the packaging facility where it's put into cheeses or milks or whatever.
So just playing devil's advocate for somebody who's like concerned, and obviously there's regulations for everything, but how is that like, is that actually a process? How is that regulated? How do we like know that that's something that's happening? Like, are there procedures that people actually have to go through? I don't know, just like thinking of questions that people might have, because it's like, to what level, just like anything else though, with like anything we see on the freaking shelf, it's like, how do we actually know like that people are like, have our, like, I don't know,
Have your back.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. The USDA hires hundreds of inspectors that work all over the country in all of these plants and farms for this.
Nice.
So that's it. And that is a job that is a really amazing job. It's incredibly important. And there are USDA inspectors everywhere, from inspecting the quality, inspecting the care of the animals, inspecting the antibiotic traces, inspecting if there's a piece of grass that came into the building. I mean, there are inspectors for everything. And if you've ever been in a facility such as a dairy facility, it's the cleanest place I've ever been in my entire life. Everything is shiny. You have to go through like antibacterial washes. You have to wear raincoats. You have to wear full body things, covers on your shoes. I mean, they go the extra mile. It's almost like a hazmat suit before you're even allowed to go in the facility as a human. And so they test their products and protect us even more than that.
Right. And dairies in particular, everything that we do for the animals to ensure their health has an impact on ensuring the health of the product as well. So dairy, for example, if you have a dairy cow, cows can be milked up to, for the herd health, cows have to be milked at least 2. Some dairies are up to 3-4 times a day. Dairies are operational 24/7 with these animals. If they get a big enough bag, it has to be milked, or else it's going to cause them serious pain and discomfort. And every time they're milked, the teats, like the actual part that the milk comes out of, is dipped with antibacterial or iodine or whatever.
An iodine solution.
Yeah. And so they're dipped before, they're milked, they're dipped after, they're sent on their way. So it's all very, very regulated. On top of that, so antibiotics are one thing. Like Rain said, it is important if you're an animal lover, regardless, because what we're trying to do here is not convince you to eat animal products in any which way. If you don't want to eat animal products, that is totally your prerogative, and we would never ask you to change your opinion. We're just trying to explain why we believe that it's okay and that it's a wonderful industry. And part of that is, like Rain said, giving antibiotics when there's a sick animal. There is no case where we're just going to give antibiotics to an entire herd just because. It's not a preventative medicine. It's not given regularly. It's if there is a sick animal. So that's one thing, antibiotics. The other thing that gets me is hormone free, because if it is a mammal that is living, breathing, and you're either consuming it for meat, milk, whatever it is, that mammal will have hormones naturally, endogenous hormones, progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, all the hormones that we people have as well. Animals go through the same cycles, especially females. They will still go through the peak in progesterone, peak in estrogen, ovulation, all those good things. And it's just, so that blows my mind. So why don't you talk a little bit about hormones too, Rain?
So hormones are really, really one of those labels that people put on their product for essentially no reason, because exactly like what Jess said, animals who are able to have like literally live. They have hormones in their system. But one really important thing is a hormone has a receptor, and receptors are different if you're a pig or a chicken or a human or a cat or cow. So my estrogen hormone receptor is completely different from that of a bovine. When I eat a piece of meat, I'm 100% eating some sort of estrogen. It's nanograms of estrogen. And I actually have a chart that talks about that. But the point is, when I ingest that, not only do my stomach acids break down that hormone molecule and eat it and make it completely unable to function, there's no way that hormone can go from my stomach into my reproductive system in order to fit into that receptor and activate a response. Because that's a whole thing. You have a hormone, you have a key, it's a lock and key type of mechanism where that key only fits into one type of lock. So I am not able to be affected by that, especially if it goes through my digestive system. It'll be broken down. Some cattle producers do use a low dose of hormones in order to improve the growth of their cattle and improve the health of their cattle. For example, steers, which are males who are unable to breed cattle, they can be given low doses of estrogen in order to help their meat be more tender, a little more fatty, and produce a more enjoyable eating experience. Now, the nanogram level of a steer with no estrogen is 0.85 nanograms, which is it's not even measurable to the human eye, absolutely not. And then a steer that is treated with some estrogen help is at 1.2 nanograms. So it was something like 0.0007th of a decimal of a percentage. That is the difference between a steer that is given an estrogen implant versus a steer that isn't. That is in a measurement of 3 ounces of beef. Now, when you look at a measurement of 3 ounces of tofu, the nanograms of estrogen rocketed up to 302 nanograms. So 3 ounces of beef with a treated steer was 1.2 nanograms. 3 ounces of tofu was 302 nanograms of estrogen. So when we're worried about these hormones affecting our system, there's just no reason for it to be, because we eat so many things that have, like eggs have 19,306 nanograms of estrogen in them. And we still eat them. They're good for us. They don't affect us in a harmful way. You don't see these manly bodybuilders out there who eat a dozen eggs a day, growing lady hair. Like, it doesn't affect them like that. And that's what people are worried about. That, oh, I remember that when we were kids, if you drank milk, you're going to start your menstrual cycle sooner. That's just absolutely not true. I remember hearing about that. And that's just scientifically not feasible.
As far as the estrogen goes, it's also crazy to think about like the different types, because a lot of my research as far as like plant-based proteins go and like things like soy, I mean, we don't even consider like animal and human estrogen and how that differs from phytoestrogen, which literally means plant estrogen. And I feel like hormones in general just have like a bad rap, and soy has been hated on for years because they think it's actually causes breast cancer. And now in the last like 10 years, so much research has come out that phytoestrogen actually helps protect you against breast cancer. And so it's just like, it's crazy to think like, let's focus on some other things here instead of being petrified of these things that just happen naturally in our bodies and things that can also help us. So it's just crazy, because I feel like all of this, our whole conversation so far, I mean, the day-to-day person has never stepped foot on like a ranch or a dairy farm or anything. Jess is literally the first person to take me on any type of farm thing. And I was like, oh my God, there's like pigs and goats, and this is crazy. So it's just cool to learn about, because I feel like so many people aren't exposed to that. And there's so many myths in all of nutrition to just like debunk all the time. So I'm happy to be like having education around this in general. But it might just be my like selfishness when you were talking about gluten earlier, because I have problems with gluten. But what does it mean if I see gluten-free on my turkey bacon or my pork loin? How do you even measure that?
So once again, when I was talking about the all natural label being a voluntary label that literally anybody could put on their product for marketing purposes, that's what the gluten-free label is as well. It is still a voluntary label. Now, there is a regulation that your product can't have any more than 20 parts per million of gluten in a gluten-free label product. So even things that are labeled gluten-free can still have 20 parts per million. When you see a gluten-free label on a product that is naturally gluten-free, don't fall for it. Your meat products are always going to be gluten-free unless they are breaded in bread. They are a product from an animal. They are a meat product. They are always going to be gluten-free. And Sav, when I was a freshman in college, I bought a package of turkey bacon that had this big old label on it that said gluten-free. And that is what triggered this whole conversation. And that is why we are here now, is because for 8 years, that label has been haunting me and how people choose to buy their products and spend their money. So if you see it on a pork loin or turkey bacon or a cut of beef or a chicken wing or something like that, unless it has been further processed into a different type of product, it does not have gluten in it. It has no.
Me, I'm like, my mind immediately went to, okay, yeah, because it's just like, obviously it's not breaded, or if it's not breaded, then it clearly doesn't have gluten in it. I'm like, what could that even mean? Like, does the animal eat like wheat or something as its like feed, and like somehow that's impacting the meat? Like that would just confuse me in general, to literally see meat and be like gluten free. I would just like probably stand there at the store and be like, what?
Like, I would love to touch on that, because I feel that if somebody who doesn't know about what products animals are fed and what's natural to them, what does somebody think? That this turkey was never fed a natural diet of wheat and bugs and whatever that is something that benefits them? Like, what do you think this turkey was fed? Like, of course they were fed wheat products, but it's a meat product in the end. It's not something, and you can look on the back and read the label. Turkey bacon has some cures and whatnot that makes it able to be the type of product that it is, which is bacon. But a meat product is not going to have gluten in it. And that label is everywhere. I saw it on my vitamins one time, my like vitamin C vitamin. And I was like,
yeah.
I don't know. Do they ever process, like, are there certain types of vitamins that like the shells are made out of wheat? I don't know, but it just seems like once I saw it on the turkey bacon, I started seeing it everywhere. And I did some research, and I did have an article that I have since lost. So I apologize, I can't find it. But I did a research article that stated gluten-free products can have a 5 to 7% markup just because of that gluten-free label.
Yeah.
Just because of that.
100% believe it. That's so true about supplements, because when I was younger, I started having some digestion problem, and one of the clinicians I was working with recommended me this like supplement. I don't even remember what it was, to be honest with you. And I started getting rashes all over my body, and I was like, what the heck? Like this stuff sucks. This isn't like helping me at all. But it actually, like, my stomach felt a little bit better, and I was like, what the heck? And so I went back to the doctor, and they were like, well, you do have problems with gluten, and there is gluten in this product. And I was like, but that is literally, the funny part is, that is literally the only supplement. I've literally worked with supplements, and like, literally this is what I do. The only supplement ever that I've seen that had gluten in it. And I was just blown away, because I was like, how is this happening? So it's crazy, because I feel like generally supplements do not have that in them, but especially things like meat. I don't know. It's kind of funny. It's just like funny to me at this point. I'm just like, everything is like gluten-free, vegan, all these things. And I'm just like plant-based. And I'm like,
what does it mean?
This literally mean anything. So it's just, this is my question. What do like we even look for? Like what matters? What do you look for that matters, that, and I'm sure we talk a little bit about cuts of meat and stuff, but what do we like, what matters on a label that you should look for if you do want to try to, be a little healthier or whatnot? Like, is that even a thing? Like,
that's even a hard question, because me, first and foremost, I say respect your budget. If you can't afford a $6 bag of apples, but you can afford a $3 bag of apples, and it means you're going to eat an apple, and then buy the $3 bag of apple. I mean, yes, Exactly. That's the thing, is don't deprive yourself just because of a label.
I love that. I love that.
That was
100%.
good. That was deep.
That was deep. No, it's so true. It's so true. And that's kind of the problem that I have with a lot of people in nutrition and wellness spaces, is it's all about promoting these things that really mean nothing. And it's just like, let's think about the average person. Let's think about, we need to just get back to the basics, balanced meals, protein, carbs, fats, like just have, if you can get those three things nice and balanced on your plate, you're getting your fiber in, that's what matters. And do that with what you can afford and what you have access to. Like, and the fact that we've gotten so far away from that is just so sad, because all of these labels and things and words and fancy terms like really deters people. And we preach about that freaking balance always.
It does. And I will make a comment on that. I mean, obviously your budget kind of is related to your lifestyle. Funny thing, there is a big difference between organic milk and non-organic milk when it comes to shelf life. Because there are so few organic dairies out in the agricultural world, organic milk is pasteurized, which means pasteurization is when something is heated to a certain degree for a certain amount of time in order to kill pathogens and bacteria. So all milk that is sold publicly is pasteurized. But organic milk is ultra high temp pasteurized, which means it's pasteurized at 280 degrees for about 2 to 4 seconds. It's super quick. It's super hot. It kills the pathogens. That reaction causes it to have a longer shelf life. I don't know why, and it's kind of unexplainable, but that pasteurization versus normal pasteurization, which is 160 to 180 degrees for 15 seconds, it's kind of like flash frozen food versus a slower frozen food. I don't know if anybody's ever researched that, but I used to work for a very large food distributor, and we would sell different types of vegetables. One of them was called individual quick frozen, and the other were just kind of frozen all together. The items that were individually quick frozen, which means they were spread out, every single item was coated in ice instead of like clumps of, broccoli being frozen together. Those held their freshness much, much longer and tasted much better than the broccoli that was kind of frozen all together. So in this case, the way organic milk is pasteurized will have a longer shelf life than non-organic milk, which is beneficial if you're somebody like me who used to live by myself. I don't drink a whole lot of milk. I don't drink as much as I used to. So if I buy a gallon of commodity milk, it's going to go bad. But if I buy a gallon of organic milk, it lasts so much longer. It is actually remarkable. So there it is. It's more expensive, but it's a lifestyle thing. Is it more wasteful to throw away milk that you don't even drink, or spend a little bit more money to buy something that's going to last you a long time?
That kind of brought up some like random thought in my head. I don't know if this is relevant or even like if you guys know anything about it, but I remember when I was a little girl, I went down to Texas to visit my grandma, and she kind of lives in like north of Corpus Christi in the more rural area. And she was just like going off about this ice cream that was so good, and we had to go get it. And I was like, okay, let's get ice cream.
Okay.
She drives me to this Amish farm. And I was like, obviously I've just never seen anything like this at that time in my life. And I was like, what the heck is going on? And then she proceeds to tell me about how like, and I don't know if it's true, I don't know where she got this, I don't know. But from what I know is like that they apparently don't really like pasteurize anything, but they just like eat the stuff like straight out. And I remember being like, I am not eating this ice cream. I am not eating this ice cream. And I was like, no, like, she's like, no, like they're all okay. Like it's all natural. I was like,
it's all natural.
I was just like petrified. I would like took a bite of the ice cream and might have been good. It was just like vanilla flavor, but I just like couldn't get over that. So yeah, I don't even know if there's a question there. Like, is that, I don't know. That's just wild. Like, can you eat things that aren't pasteurized? How,
So let's talk about the natural process of milking a cow. So like we said, cows, their teats and their udders are cleaned. They do a lot of things to keep a cow's udder very, 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 very clean. And part of that is because poop comes out from a very close area of an udder on a cow. So naturally, E. coli can be something that could harm you in milk. That's why it's pasteurized. when you don't pasteurize it, there is a chance you could get a foodborne illness from it. But I tell you what, I'm surrounded by Amish out here. The raw milk is the best thing I have ever had. And we actually will buy gallons of raw milk, and the cream on top of it is about this big, because they don't homogenize it either, which homogenization breaks down all the fat molecules, so that because it's less dense than the liquid in the milk, and all that fat will float to the top if it's not homogenized. But we'll take that off and we'll make our own ice cream out of that. And sometimes we'll harvest our own wild raspberries and make our own ice cream out of wild raspberries and raw milk. It's amazing. I've been drinking it for years. I've never gotten sick. I'm in no way endorsing it because I don't want people running out and buying raw milk and getting sick. But I'm just saying, support your local Amish community if you have.
It's so funny. I don't know if either of you watched Schitt's Creek, but there's literally an episode too where they're like selling raw milk, and it's like this whole like thing, and I was just like, it just got me thinking.
I remember that one.
Yeah. They were like raw milk. It was like $200 for all this raw milk, and I was just like, what is raw milk? And now I'm like, Amish. I get it.
Yes. No, so any milk that's sold publicly must be pasteurized, but like Jess said, it doesn't have to be homogenized. And yeah, the Morning Fresh Dairy, if you're in the Front Range, it's like $2 extra per gallon to get milk delivered to your door in little glass bottles like the old days. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's the best. Okay, so switching gears a little bit, I want to ask you about, since we're talking about the animal directly, I want to talk about some differences in more labels that we see. One of the most common questions that I get is, what's the difference between grass-fed, pasture-raised, vegetarian-fed, grain-fed, all of this when it comes to beef, pork, and chicken? And I know you also wanted to talk about the 5 freedoms when it comes to rearing animals. So yeah, whatever order you want to take that.
Okay, I love this. So first of all, I just want to say that what we've been talking about, organic, gluten-free, natural, commodity, whatever, that doesn't refer to the quality or the nutritional aspect of the food, right? That's what we've been talking about. Those are just labels that mean how that item is processed. Now what we're getting into actually does affect nutrition, and it does come into play with your eating experience and how that food may affect your body. So our next set of labels, I'm going to say grass-fed versus pasture-fed versus commodity. So let's first talk about commodity. Because a lot of people, when they think of commodity beef, they think of beef in feedlots. On average, beef only spend the last 30 to 90 days of their life in a feedlot. Other than that, the majority of their life is spent on pasture, is spent grazing on BLM land, is spent being fed hay over the winter when it's too cold for something to grow. So on average, your beef animal is getting the same sort of pasture experience that an organic animal is getting, because under the organic label, an animal does have to be on pasture for 30% of their life. Now, let's go to grass-fed. A grass-fed animal must be fed a forage diet, a primarily forage diet, from the time of weaning, which means after they're done with milk, until the time that they are processed. Yes.
What is forage?
So forage would be like hay, or silage, which would be like leftover corn husks. A lot of the time, what animals are eating is a leftover product that was used for human consumption, and what they're eating is something that is not able to be used for human consumption. So that's a baby theme that we could have a whole other topic about, but at the end of the day, your cow is not stealing your salad. So just to touch on that. And so a grass, yeah. So alfalfa, grass, hay, any like leafy green type substance. Now, pasture raised is the animal must be fed on fresh grass. Grass fed can mean a hay product, which means that grass has been, in a sense, dehydrated and then baled into a bale and then fed to the animal. When a grass product goes from growing out of the ground fresh into a hay product, it does lose some of its nutritional value, primarily the omega-3s. Now, an animal who's been raised on pasture is going to have a higher component of omega-3s in their milk, in their beef product, in their eggs. So that is where you should spend your money, because if you want to have higher omega-3s, which Sav, I'd love if you talked as to how beneficial omega-3s are. If you want more omega-3s in your diet, focus on pasture raised. There's no point doing organic. There's no point doing grass fed. That is where you see the big jump in omega-3s, is when you go from grass fed to pasture raised.
Totally.
Oh, so just to clarify, the pasture raised is grass growing out of the ground throughout their entire life. The grass fed only has to be 30% of their life.
The grass fed is from the time of weaning until the time of processing. Under the organic label, an animal must be on pasture for 30% of their life.
So what's the difference between grass fed and pasture fed?
So grass fed is when they're fed a hay product, like a dried.
Okay.
Product. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So grass fed is hay product and pasture raised is growing out of the ground.
It can be pasture, like people can have a grass-fed animal on pasture, but they're also allowed to put the animal in a feedlot and have them fed a hay diet. Okay. But pasture raised must be raised in the pasture, eating the growing grass out of the ground for their life.
So as far as, I have a question too, but I'll touch on the omega-3s and why that's kind of good for health overall. I mean, there's like literally so many benefits to omegas in general. There's a lot of fights about like omega-3s versus 6, but what's necessary about omega is promoting heart health, skin health, eyesight, brain function. Like it's just an essential nutrient for the body. And there's a lot of foods that you can get it in animal products, plant-based products, but it's essential. So it's something that is just needed for our bodies and our brains to really focus and be able to have proper cognition. So there's that. My question is, as somebody who has thought this before and is kind of the weirdo who's always like, when I was a kid, I would eat chicken or a hamburger and I would just see an animal. That's just like how I was in my head, and I would picture it and I'm like traumatized or whatever. And I've definitely never pushed that on anybody else. But my question is like, can you just speak to the life of an animal, like how they're treated before they are euthanized? Is that like the proper term to use? For like the use of feeding and nourishing people? What does that look like from the time that they're born to like when they are euthanized? And I know that Jess has spoken and said that they've like lived good lives. And I know that there's differences in like, especially beef and poultry, but I guess we can speak to beef because I think that that's what you primarily work with, if I'm correct.
It is. I do have some basic understanding on the other things. So there's something that Temple Grandin, she is a remarkable woman who
she's with autism, right? I've heard about her.
She taught at CSU. She was our professor. We've worked with her a lot. She really normalized and spread the word about how important it is for animals to be used as a food source, but used ethically. Because if the whole world stopped eating beef, we're not going to get rid of cows. Like, where are they going to go? They're going to keep breeding. They're going to keep doing their thing. Animals have been used for eons for human consumption. And I'm not trying to push an agenda at all, but if we are going to use animals for human consumption, we have to do it ethically. And I completely agree. So what a lot of companies are starting to incorporate is an idea and a practice of using the 5 freedoms. Now, there is not specific designated laws protecting animals in the food system. However, I will say that when a rancher is raising a beef cattle, they're literally raising their life. They're raising thousands of dollars. They're raising the food on the table for their family. So whatever they can do to keep that animal healthy and happy, they're going to do. When you mistreat an animal, you not only cause them distress, you cause a lower quality in that food substance. So that means you're losing money. So I think it's really important to remember that these animals are a part of farmers and ranchers' lives, and they are their livelihood. So whatever they can do to make that animal have a healthy and functioning life in order to put money in their pocket, they're going to do that. And there are fines, there are regulations, there are things that happen when people abuse their animals. And that is the thing that you don't see in the media. You don't see the dairies that are shut down for 5 years because something went wrong. You don't see the plants that are shut down for 3 hours because something went wrong. You don't see that. All you see is what happened, but you do not see the repercussions. And I can assure you the repercussions are large.
So when you say there are no regulations in the beef industry, you just mean that it's not necessary for an operation to have 3 buildings over here, their system over here, exactly this distance away. Those are the kind of regulations you're talking about, right? Because there are tons of animal abuse regulations.
Yeah.
What's the word I'm looking for?
Thank you for specifying that, because I was like,
yeah,
what? I thought
animal welfare.
Like,
yeah.
Okay.
No. Rain is specifically talking about like industrial regulation as to you need metal poles, not wood poles, none of that.
Mm-hmm.
What there is tons of regulations about animal welfare, ensuring the safety of animals, ensuring a good meat product. Of course, there are bad people in the world, and we see that in the news all the time. All the Fairlife stuff that is constantly resurfacing. There are bad people in this world, but the USDA regulations and the good farmers and ranchers out there have one goal in mind, is to create a good product, which comes from a happy animal. So Rain, do you want to touch on the 5 freedoms real quick, since that kind of goes along with this?
Yeah, absolutely. So the 5 freedoms are regulations that companies are using in order to show the public how the animals are being raised and how it benefits them. So the first freedom is the freedom from hunger and thirst. So of course that requires constant supply to water and adequate feed source. So in feedlots, cattle are fed 2 to 4 times a day, depending on what stage of their life they're at. So they are constantly around a supply of food. And then they're always provided water and rations multiple times a day if they're not on pasture. And if they are on pasture, ensuring that that pasture is large enough and beneficial enough for the amount of animals in that pasture. The second freedom is freedom from discomfort, which means the animals are allowed to have shelter, protection from animals, and whatnot. The third freedom is freedom from pain, injury, and disease. And this means preventative medicine, such as vaccines, so that animals are not Jesus Christ, coming down with these diseases. And then also administering antibiotics when the animal's hurt, putting bandages on wounds, separating an animal that's lethargic and watching them and trying to figure out what's wrong with them, stuff like that. Number 4, the freedom to express normal behavior. So this is the freedom to walk around, to mingle with other animals, to be curious. One of the freedoms that this is being shown in a lot of feedlots is ranchers are putting, the car wash scrubbies, like the big tall scrubs that spin around. Cows love scratching themselves. So they put these giant scratching posts, pretty much like for a cat, in the feedlots for these cows so that they can scratch and play around. And they'll put like a tether ball out there so they can, play around. And cows are very curious animals. So part of that freedom, expressing their normal behavior, is letting them play around and be curious and explore. Cows also love to be able to see out their prey animals. So they like being able to see around them. So when you see those large mounds of dirt and whatnot in feedlots and cows are always sitting on top of them, that's what they like to do. So farmers don't just do that for fun. They do that so that cows can have a place to sit up and look around and feel safe. And then number 5.
So cute. They sound
I know. It is adorable, right? I mean, these are their natural behaviors. And then 5, the freedom from fear and distress. So this is very, very correlating. Number 5 kind of wraps up what the other ones say. It's fear from being alone. So making sure they're always with the herd. When a mama cow is starting to have her baby, taking her into a separate stall so that she can have a peaceful birth, stuff like that. Any questions like on these 5 freedoms, and like what do you kind of think about that?
That's awesome. I mean, it's all, like I said, it's all education to me, and I'm sure to the typical person. So it's just like, it's good to hear. I mean, I'm not PETA, obviously, and I know that people eat meat. It's part of like what I do for a living. I help regulate nutritional content around that. So it's good for me to hear on my own personal ethical side for sure. But I think anybody would want that. If you're eating meat, you'd want to know that the animal you're eating was, euthanized in a very ethical way, and that they still lived a good life. And it has been a part of human society since like we even have recorded history of human society. So it's really cool. I didn't even know that was a thing, like the 5 freedoms. That was really cool to learn about for sure.
So on the topic of the 5 freedoms and the work that Temple Grandin has done to make the animal's life most comfortable from birth until death, a lot of people who are associated with companies like PETA always say when the cows arrive at the processing plants or the pigs or whatever, they know they're going to die. I can absolutely tell you that because of the work that Temple Grandin has done, and her innovations and designs are implemented in all over the country. Anywhere, if your animal is processed in the United States, they are under these 5 freedoms and they are under these animal welfare regulations. But part of her designs are made so that when the animal goes from the truck into the sorting facility to be processed for human consumption, they are able to move around in a way that's natural. Their eyesight's blocked. There's sound barriers. There's all these things that make the animal the most relaxed they can be and the most comfortable they are when they are essentially euthanized. So I think that's really important. They aren't in distress, like there are so many regulations out there that help prevent them from being in distress as they go through that process. And people work very, very hard to make sure that happens. So I think that's just an important thing to note, that they're not going in there thinking that they're going to go that direction. They just think they're with their buddies and hanging out and getting moved around.
Yeah, we can cut this part out because it's like never a productive conversation to have, but it just sucks because like what is like painful to talk about is the fact that like there are all these food freedoms and there are all these like great regulations, and through universities we saw like the top of the top, like the pristine slaughter facilities and learned about the greatest stuff. But there are so many jackasses out there that as much as we defend, there's still so much animal abuse that goes on, and that just comes with working with animals. But it's the same, like you want to outlaw owning dogs, there's a bunch of shitheads who own dogs and abuse them all the time. Like it just sucks. Like
there's a lot of doctors who do really awful shit to human beings too.
Yeah, right.
Just being a bad person.
Yeah.
It absolutely sucks. And that is, I mean, that's 100% part of the reason why me and Jess especially are so passionate about the ag industry, is we know that there is a time and a place to make it better and that we are working towards that every single day. But it's so important to have these conversations and to have level-headed conversations, because we all know we can get so inflammatory about certain things that we see on media. And you know what? They're made to make us inflammatory so that we argue and we never have a decent conversation.
Yeah.
But having opportunities like this with you guys is just incredible, because we can have a discussion. And I hope that we're bombarded with questions. I hope people ask me the most basic level questions ever. Like, I hope nobody feels uncomfortable to come forward and just ask, like, what do you mean by, I like literally, like you said, grass-fed. What do you mean by being processed? What do you mean by milk? What is milk? Milk comes from a mammary gland. Like, that is what milk is. Like, what's a mammary gland? Let's talk about it. So I think that we are really, really chipping away day by day by what Jess said, by the people who have given the ag industry such a bad name.
I feel like, I don't know, I have a lot of hope for our generation and future generations too, though, because that's like what we wanted to do on this whole podcast. Jess and I have talked about it from day one, is it's like, we obviously come from very different backgrounds. We have very different eating styles. And like, I just feel like it's unrealistic to be in my field and help people every single day and be like, you shouldn't eat meat because I don't. It's just like, I just don't understand that way of thinking. And so I think it's just so important to have these conversations, open-minded about things, and to be honest, it's always the older freaking people who like just can't do it. And it's just like, can we just bring it down to have a level-headed conversation so we can all get better in every single way in all of these fields, you know, not just ag, not just nutrition, just being a freaking human being. So
yeah, absolutely. Can I touch real quick? Because there was one part I skipped. So to all of our listeners, I made a little supplemental TikTok that goes along with this. And in the TikTok, one thing I did was I looked at eggs, and I looked at vegetarian eggs versus regular, like vegetarian fed chickens who produce eggs versus regular eggs. So both pork species and chickens are omnivores. And by omnivores, it means that these animals have a gastric system that are meant to eat both protein and vegetable matter, and especially chickens in their natural habitat, which if we look back at our 5 freedoms, the freedom to express normal behavior in the wild, chickens eat whatever they can get their claws on. They eat bugs and they eat bugs, and they will clean up. If they find a dead animal, they might peck on it a little bit. So whenever I'm in the grocery store and I see anything that's vegetarian fed, when it refers to poultry, it makes me cringe, and I stay far away from it because I know that animal was not given the proper diet in order to most benefit their body. And the same thing goes to pork. You know, the porcine animals need to be supplemented with some sort of protein because their gastric system needs that, and that is what their acids are meant to process in their body. So when I go to the grocery store, I choose to pick a non-vegetarian fed chicken. And you know, people don't understand that chickens are wild, y'all. Like have you ever seen a mouse run through a chicken coop? They don't make it out alive. Chickens are wild. No, there's a reason why there's a pecking order. Chickens will turn on each other, and truly. So that is another thing I just want to touch on. As part of those 5 freedoms is feeding the animal what they need to eat, not feeding them something that makes a consumer comfortable.
Awesome. So Rain, we've learned so much from you already, and we're just excited to see what people can do with all of this information in their day-to-day life. So if you would love to do it, we'd love to have you announce our weekly challenge.
Okay, everybody. So this week's challenge is the next time you go to your grocery store, I challenge you to step out of your comfort zone and buy something organic that you normally buy non-organic, or buy something commodity. Pay attention to those labels. And if you have questions, please reach out. Make the experience fun. Go with a friend. Go explore your local grocery store and go explore the options that you have and what those options really mean for you, your body, and your budget.
I love that. That would be so fun to do. Actually, we should do that. Just like go give it a shot and try and see if there's any differences. Rain, thank you so much. This has been something we've wanted to talk about for so long, and we just want to have so many more episodes educating and talking about all of this and bringing 2 seemingly different sides together so we can all live happily and healthier together. So it's just been great learning about food labels and clearing up some common myths. And we know you put together a bunch of resources and links for people to check out. So for those of you listening, those are all going to be in the show notes. Go check those out. And seriously, it's awesome. Go educate yourself on it.
Yeah, of course. This has been an absolute joy. This is what I love to do, and I'm doing it with 2 of my favorite people. So thank you for having me. And to all of our listeners, please don't be shy. Please reach out, ask me questions, ask your friendly neighborhood animal scientist. If you know anybody who's in the agriculture world, please reach out. We love talking about this stuff. We love educating our people. But I just want everybody to know, like, they don't have to be shy. I'm a friend. Like, please, please Instagram DM me and whatnot if you have any further questions or comments.
Oh my gosh, fantastic. Talk about an open arm. And she means it, y'all. She's actually this nice in real life. So definitely you can find Rain to reach out on Instagram and TikTok at Rain Reich. That's RainReich. To become a part of our family and community, join us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube at And a Diet Soda. Thank you again, Rain, and we'll see everybody next week.
Thanks for listening. We hope you were able to give yourself a little love today. You deserve it.
Be sure to subscribe to this podcast and check us out on social media for weekly conversations and attainable challenges for your health.